Welcome to the Amphibian Press podcast. I'm Sarah Voris, and with me today is A.W. Cross. She's an awesome sci-fi author, and she's also part of the Dark Horizons box set, which you've been hearing us talk about and be really excited about. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about the book that is in Dark Horizons, which is Seeds of Winter.
Oh, that's right. So Seeds of Winter, it was actually my debut novel, funnily enough. And I wrote it after reading a paper by Hugo de Garis, which talked about basically the rise of artificial intelligence. And he sort of, because, the main idea with artificial intelligence and the rise of it, the thing that's in popular media the most, you got Skynet, you got the rise of these hostile machines that are going to take over the world and, crush humanity. And that seems to be sort of the popular mode of thinking of how the world was going to be destroyed by artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And his sort of take on it was that it was going to be the development of artificial intelligence that would actually cause the end of the world, in the sense that humanity would separate itself into three groups. So and he called them the Cosmans, the Terrans, and the Cyborgists. And so the Terrans are, your general sort of Luddites, the people who are against the development of artificial intelligence to a sentient level. The Cosmists, of course, are the ones creating the artificial intelligence, and the Cyborgists are the one who advocated for, people becoming cyberized themselves, that integration of man and machine.
Yes.
And he predicted that it would be the fighting of those three groups that would actually cause a war and actually end the world. By causing a giga-death war that would just kill billions and billions of people. So I thought that was really interesting, because that was the first time I'd sort of read about the implications in artificial intelligence that way. And so I thought, oh, okay. And then it just sort of developed into a 3-book series over that, as I sort of explored what would happen in the aftermath of that giga-death war.
Mm-hmm. That's really fascinating, because you are right. It's usually just like man versus machine, full stop.
Yeah.
And there's no gray area there.
No, that's it. And the artificial intelligence is always evil.
Right,
It's
right.
always out to get us.
Or just like this completely cold, not so much evil, but almost apathetic.
Yeah.
There's no emotion there. But we're already seeing people integrate on a very low tech level. But we're already seeing them integrate with technology in a way that is so much more advanced and so much more I don't know the word I'm looking for, but just intense, that actual true integration, as opposed to just like, I'm holding my phone all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
We're already there in a lot of ways. So.
Well, that's it. And it happens so subtly and insidiously that I think people don't realize how much it's already started.
Yeah.
Because again, they're expecting it to be the way that popular media sort of portrays it. But it's not obviously going to happen that way. It's obviously in the medical field, it's starting a lot, cyberization,
Mm-hmm.
and in other fields as well. Like the medical field is the one that I sort of pay the most attention to, because I have a personal interest in that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like my son's 4, and I can't wait to see, like, when he's, in his 20s and 30s and 40s, what it's going to be like, for him growing up in this world where, this integration of man and machine has already started.
Well, yeah. And I think, luckily, to a great extent, our integration is more with technology, I think, than with true artificial intelligence, though, again.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But that's an interesting debate, too, because a lot, and I was actually just talking about this with my husband, but how a lot of people who are, like, staunchly against cyborgs or that integration, thinking it's like sacrilege, your body, well, whatever. A lot of people who feel that way are able-bodied, or don't, have some sort of medical condition. And a lot of people who are like, no, I think it's awesome, are people like me, where it's like, my legs don't work the way they used to. I wouldn't mind some fake hips or some fake, like,
Oh, absolutely. Like, I had my colon taken out due to my Crohn's disease. I had ulcerative colitis, so then I got Crohn's, and I obviously should have been buying lottery tickets at the same time. But I don't have a colon, and I would love it. I'm just waiting for my bionic colon to get installed. But that's it. And you're very right about that, about it mostly being able-bodied people. And that's actually something that I explored in the Seeds of Winter. Like the protagonist, Aelith, she has the cyberization because of she's going to die. She's got a medical problem. They can't heal her. So it's sort of her only choice. It's that choice of, do you become part machine yourself, or do you die? And I think a lot of people who would say, oh no, it's wrong, you should just die. They're not in that position. They've never been in that position of facing, their own mortality, or a life with some kind of, very severe handicap or disability that could be, fixed with cyberized components.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder too, how much of this debate is sort of mirroring a lot of the ethical debates surrounding organ transplantation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
My dad was a liver transplant recipient 27 years ago.
And, oh, wow.
Very early on in that particular organ's transplant trajectory, I guess.
Yeah.
And he was very lucky in that he actually was able to receive 2 livers, and he turned the first one down because he wasn't ready, which is like unheard of now because hepatitis wasn't as much of a thing then as it is.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So he was very lucky, and he didn't have hepatitis. He had an autoimmune disease. Thanks, Dad, for giving that to me. But it's just such a heavy topic, and just we were also one of the first families who were able to meet the donor family.
Oh, wow.
And like talk about heavy. And it's just something to me that this backlash is so, it seems stronger. And again, maybe it's just because I'm alive during more of this debate than I was during the transplantation debate. But like, if it's a machine, no one has to die for you to get your.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
And it's like, it just seems so funny that it seems like there's more of a backlash than against like, well, someone had to die for you to receive that. And it's just a really interesting parallel there.
No, it is. It is funny, isn't it? Because you like you say, you'd think people would be a lot more like, oh yeah, we can just make it in a lab. It's fine. It's, the parts can be replaced, if they were, it would be great. But yeah, people do seem to have quite a significant resistance to the idea of it. But again, I don't know if that's due to popular media or like, because I am waiting for my entire bionic body. Soon, I am embracing the cyborgs. Yeah. Like if I had a chance, you can damn well bet I would be all over it. But yeah, but the more people I talk to about it, a lot of people are very, very uncomfortable with it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't want anyone like hacking into my brain. Like
no.
They probably take one look and be like, oh, fuck this, I'm turning around.
Yeah, nothing in here, let's go.
there's way too much going on. But, I wouldn't want someone hacking into my brain, but I do think there is this in-between point before we start having it be like the artificial intelligence, before I have like Wi-Fi in my legs or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
That it's, it's totally possible. And hey, maybe they're doing it and we just don't know. I don't know. They were.
Well, I think there's all sorts going on that we just have no idea about. Again, we only know what we're told, right? So it's. I'm excited to think about that, though. I'm really excited to think that there's this whole big thing going on with cyberization that I don't know about. It's really exciting to think about. I'm not afraid of the future in that way, at all. I just can't wait. I just can't wait to see how it unfolds.
I mean, at this point, I feel like humans might be the scariest part of the future. Which, I mean,
absolutely.
Like in the case of your series and their inspiration, I mean, that is really the takeaway. Is it's not so much the AI, it's the human conflict around AI. Which
well, that's it. Yeah, and it's our reactions to it and the way we feel that we need to cope with it. And that's the thing. It's humans tend to be a bit like that. It's kind of got to be all or nothing, doesn't it? It's and. But yeah, it is. It's I do when I read that paper, it was like an epiphany for me because I had never thought of that before. So yeah, I'm very grateful to him for that. I have tried to get in contact with him, to discuss the paper with him and stuff, but he's probably busy.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know. It's like doesn't want to. Think his work is being fictionalized and all. I don't know, but yeah. So far, Hugo, if you're listening to this, hook me up.
I'm waiting for your response.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
So, just sort of building off of that, how do you feel science fiction shapes the future, because that's a lot of what this box set is focusing on, which actually wasn't, I mean, my original intention was just to like band up with some awesome sci-fi people, but sort of with the current political climate that's been going on in a lot of different countries, and just with a lot of the debates that are coming up about the planet and our future as humans, how do you feel sci-fi fits into that?
Well, I think like, well, in my case, I write social science fiction, so I don't write, and there's probably a lot of harder or, science fiction readers and authors who don't consider when I write science fiction. It's like that whole Margaret Atwood debate, is The Handmaid's Tale science fiction? And I believe it is, and that's what I believe. Yeah, well, that's it, right? Like, and that's what people are saying. It wasn't considered science fiction, but now, it's like, so people are realizing that these things can happen. And I think for me, that's where I sort of think science fiction is shaping the future. I think it's predictive ability, especially in terms of, in technology, yeah, we can predict a lot of technology, spaceships and that, but that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the implications and the social effects of different technology and stuff. And I think for me, it shapes the future in the sense that it predicts how, like with Hugo de Garis, it predicts how we're going to react to things. And then that obviously is going to shape the future in sense of, are we as a species going to be able to survive these changes? Are we going to be able to make them work for us? Is it, because it's not as like I said, with spaceships, yeah, that's one part of it, but that's not going to affect every person in the world, whereas the social effects of this technology is everyone is going to have to cope with it.
Right.
And so I think it's interesting to look at, people like Margaret Atwood and a lot of the writers today even, and they're predicting outcomes that very well might be true in a few years, but it's not something that's often paid a lot of attention to. And I'm hoping as sci-fi goes on, we'll have more and more social science fiction.
Right. Well, I think it's hard to write science fiction without going there. I recently had someone, bring up like, oh, well, let's not get political. It's like, how can you write, pretty much any genre without going there to some extent, just because if you're not saying something that is thought-provoking or, making a statement of some sort, are you really saying anything that's worth saying? And I don't mean like in casual conversations where you're talking about the weather. I mean like,
oh no,
on your platform. And I think a lot of times in sci-fi, and to some degree fantasy as well, because I write in both genres, I'm constantly looking at that, like, anything is possible. So when I read something, and this is a world where technically anything could be possible based on the author's imagination, the people you think to include or not include, that's telling. And
absolutely.
Like you're saying, it's like, you're putting out there either a warning or a promise for the future. And what does that say about the future?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like science fiction by its nature is political. Like, I don't think you can have science fiction that's not political, because it's all speculative and you're speculating based on human, like you say, human reaction. And that's political, no matter if it's, in a small way or a big way. And that's it, like what you choose to include. Like, because when you write, basically, as an author, you're writing the world as you see it, even if it's speculative. So like you say, the things that you choose to include and the things you choose to leave out, those are the things that you view as important or non-important or as having relevancy. So yeah, it is very, very telling. Like there's been lots of debates on, different things, between, sexuality, gender, all these different things. Especially in the sci-fi community, there's been a lot of controversy over the years and stuff. And I think that's very interesting and very, very telling. And I'm glad to see science fiction going down a much more diverse route now.
For sure, especially
than it was.
I feel like that's where you're going to get the core of what it is to be science fiction in a lot of ways.
Oh no, absolutely. That's it. Like, how can you be talking about societies and changing societies if you're not including everybody in that society? Different genders, different sexualities, different abilities. a disability, as it were. Like that's it. You have to consider it as a whole. It's not, but a lot of the time it's like, most books are, they're able-bodied, but science fiction is going to change that, for people who aren't able-bodied. Like, we were talking about it before. And that's going to be a very, very big thing, but you don't often see that explored. It's right. Like we because it's speculative fiction, we somehow assume that there doesn't have to be a level of reality to it. And I don't agree with that. I think the most effective and the most powerful books that I've read have taken, the society as we have it now, with all its different diversity and all of its problems, and speculated from that, rather than from this not perfect society, but from a very two-dimensional sort of society, and then extrapolated from that.
Mm-hmm. And I do think in a lot of ways sci-fi can be, which is sort of what this box set sort of ended up becoming, was almost a potential roadmap out of where
yes.
we are, or where we could be very soon. And that was so I was watching Black Mirror. I've watched most of it, not the most recent, like 2 seasons, but I've watched most of it. And at first it was like so dark and so depressing, and a lot of people were like, I can't. And I still watched it, but I was very much like, I can only watch it when I'm having a good day. But then I noticed that towards the middle, I think it was like the 4th season or something, it was almost like they flipped the coin over, and it went from being the like dark side, the warning of technology, to being, but if we do it right, and that's sort of a lot of sci-fi, like with subgenres like cyberpunk and solarpunk. I feel like they're constantly walking this line, flip-flopping between the warning and the promise.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I agree with, what you were saying about Black Mirror, like that episode for me, San Junipero.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yes, like that was fantastic. And to me, that was just so amazing and brilliant, because it's well, my friend, hey, Emily, she calls it hope punk, like, with cyberpunk and solarpunk. So, this rise of this new genre, hope punk, which is looking at, the same things that cyberpunk and all these things look at, but with hope, rather than it being this warning or this, sort of doom prediction. It's looking at all the amazing things we're going to be able to do with this stuff instead. And that's definitely the side that I fall on, even though the Seeds of Winter and the whole Arlexis War series is a bit grim. I'm really hoping that, the ending is uplifting enough for some people, and that, it takes a bit of a grim journey to get there, but I'm hoping that it's uplifting enough. And that with the series I'm writing now, and, all future series, that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to look at the positives and how wonderful and uplifting and, these technologies are going to be, rather than, they're going to destroy us, and, this, this planet's going to die. And it's going to be, we're going to become this, like, almost like this idealized, like Star Trek, the next generation sort of society.
There's like no,
like, cause I mean, it's got its problems. I'm not saying, it's not problematic in some ways, but, like that's definitely more where I sit on the spectrum of stuff. I want to see the science fiction and see these things in a really, really positive way, in a really progressive, emotionally and mentally positive way, rather than just being about sort of the physical, what it can do for us physically.
Right. Well, I think that too is like, because, it's going to help me and you physically. But like you said, you have to everyone, even the people who don't want to be integrated with their new robot body, it can still do amazing things for you, but it's just such a process, and you have to figure out how to navigate it, because it is something that is in a lot of ways alien to us.
Oh, absolutely. Like, my parents are nearly 80.
Yes.
And just everything that's happened, since my birth, I was part of that Zennial generation who saw the rise of the internet. I'm dating myself here. And so that was a really unique generation to be part of, right? Like, we had digital and analog childhoods. And like my mom, when she was that age, they didn't even have indoor toilets or TV. And so just, from what she's watched, throughout her lifetime, is just incredible. And that's the way, like I was saying before, how I feel about my son. Like, it's just going to be incredible watching what's going to happen. And I think it is, like, for people like my mom and dad, it's hard to accept. I think if they were offered cyborg bodies, I don't know that they would accept them. I don't know if the change or just the concept of it is just too much,
right?
For the lives that they've lived. But then I'd like to think, obviously, that they would just embrace it, and as I would. But yeah, it's not going to be like that for everyone. It's easy for me to think, oh, well, why wouldn't anybody just welcome it with open arms? But I'm sure there's lots of people who the idea is absolutely terrifying and just, on a very visceral level.
Right. Well, I do remember, going back to my dad's transplant, when he first had it done, like when he was coming out of anesthesia, he looked down at his body and saw the scar. Well, the sutures at that point, it wasn't even a scar. And he said, what did I do to myself?
Yeah.
And of course, like, he didn't regret it, but there was this deep, like, this is a different body than it was.
Oh, it's incredible. Like you, when I had ulcerative colitis, I had my colon taken out. I had an ostomy for a while, so which is an external bag.
Right.
And one of the things they used to do for therapy is they would make you stand in front of the mirror naked and look at it and touch it, because they were trying to get this radical acceptance of, because it's a totally new body.
Right.
It's completely alien to have, part of your intestine outside of your body, where you can see it and touch it. And a lot of people really struggled with that kind of body acceptance. Like I also write nonfiction, and I've written a series of, funny survival guides, for coping with things like ostomies and ulcerative colitis and that sort of thing.
That's awesome.
But I just, like those were actually the first books I wrote before I started writing fiction. The fiction is a lot more fun. But just looking at that body, and it just seems so wrong. And yet it saved my life. And I'm sure your dad, that's sort of what, was going through your dad's mind, like this thing, it was something that you had to do in order to live. But it goes against sort of your your primeval human instinct to mutilate yourself that way for any sort of reason. And you are different. You are a completely different person after that operation.
Yeah, for sure. I think too, it's just sort of going back to what you said a little bit ago, where, your parents wouldn't make that choice. And a lot of people of that age probably wouldn't either. But I think a lot of what maybe older sci-fi goes for is that it's not a choice. Like, you must become Borg. Like,
yeah, that's it. You will be assimilated. Yeah.
And so I think where a lot of our sci-fi is going is keeping the agency.
Yes.
Whether or not they, do you want to use the wheelchair, or do you want to use the mechanical legs, or do you not want to do either? And I think blurring that line between the wheelchair and the mechanical legs, or whatever it happens to be, just that's like the most visual example I can think of.
Oh yeah.
I think that's what we have to work on is making it clear that, like, it's the same thing, it's just different.
Well, no, absolutely. And I think that would go a long way to people's acceptance of it, cyberization and things like that, is if you have a choice and you have, like you say, the agency to make that choice for yourself. And I think, like you say, that's what a lot of science fiction has kind of ignored, that it's kind of just taken consent for granted. Just assume that, yeah, this is just happening to everybody. And there's no question of choice or agency. And then again, that was something I tried to explore in the Art Elect War book. People made their choices. And unfortunately, making those choices, that's what resulted in this, this Giga Death War.
That's just fascinating. I love that. And I love that you're using, like, nonfiction as your inspiration for your sci-fi, because that's, like, I use archaeology as my inspiration in a lot of ways.
Oh, right. Yes, of course. Yes, I forgot that you're an archaeologist.
Yeah. So, like, using the part of the sci-fi is so much fun for me.
Oh God, yeah. I bet you've got a wealth of inspiration to draw.
I do have a disclaimer that says, like, if you happen to recognize the stories you may have told me in the field.
Too bad, sucker.
Yeah,
definitely.
There's one character that didn't get changed, but that was, like, in memoriam, and it's like I think he'd appreciate it. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
I think everybody secretly wants that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm famous. So let's sort of switch gears a little bit, and can you tell me a bit about the Fox-Swept Array series that you have?
Oh yes, so the Fox-Swept Array series. So that's the current series about this year. The fourth book's going to come out sometime before Christmas, hopefully. But it's still science fiction. It's science fiction romance, which is something I love to read. And even though the Art Elect War has some romance in it, it's not the focus. So I wanted to kind of shift that and look at a lot of science fiction romances are, you know, alien abduction and that sort of thing, and great. But I wanted to take it in a bit of a different direction. So I was reading some fairy tales with my son one night. We were reading Pinocchio, and you know, it suddenly hit me this, you know, Pinocchio as an android.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so that was sort of the start of like, oh, okay. So I thought I'm going to do science fiction romance retellings of different fairy tales. And so yeah, it started with Pinocchio. So I turned Pinocchio into a female sentient, well, I call them synandroids. So they're sentient androids.
Okay.
And then I just kind of went from there.
That's awesome. And I think it's fun to see a retelling that's sci-fi, because a lot of times we'll see like the contemporary modern retelling, which are like, those are super fun. But bridging the gap, because like sci-fi and fantasy in so many ways are like very different. I mean, I know they're very similar too, but I think
no, absolutely,
do that flip-flop with like a fairy tale is really interesting. I've another sci-fi author friend, Ariel Sealing, and she's writing a bunch of fairy tale retellings as sci-fi shorts.
Oh, nice.
I'll have to put you in touch with her, because she's awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because I'm hoping that it's a growing genre, because I think it's a fantastic way to, because obviously fairy tales and stuff, you know, when they were written, they were a reflection of the time and, you know, the culture they were written in. And so to combine that now with science fiction, to me, just seems like a really logical leap. You know, like science fiction is almost like the fairy tales of our time, you know, in the sense that we're making moral observations and, you know, speculations and, you know, like discussing, like it's sort of like a snapshot of our culture at this point in time.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Think of it like that, but it's in a lot of ways it is.
Yeah, no, and shorts are great. Like that's something else I want to work on this year, is getting more shorts out, and because they're a great way. And because like what I always thought, like my audience when I wrote these, like I said, I thought my audience was going to be the same, you know, readers who read, you know, the alien abduction and the space, you know, the science fiction, you know, in space and that sort of thing. And it wasn't at all. It actually tended to be more paranormal romance readers who wouldn't normally pick up science fiction. But I think that's also the great thing about, you know, social science fiction, is that it's a lot more accessible.
Yes.
Like people see a spaceship on a cover or an alien and they're like, oh, I don't want to read it, because either, you know, it's going to use words that I'm not going to understand, or it's going to talk about, you know, concepts that I might find boring, or, you know, and so I think, but that, you know, that's obviously, I feel that's a misconception. I can understand why some people feel that way.
Right.
But I think where social science fiction is so great, and this is what I was trying to do with the Fox Swept Array series, is just make it really accessible and readable for people who don't really want to read science fiction.
And I think toning it down, I mean, not that I think it needs to be toned down, but toning it down and making it seem possible.
Yes.
Like with fairy tales, turning them contemporary, making it so it's a world that you can actually put yourself in if it's not something that you're really familiar with. And I mean, I love all sorts of sci-fi, but my top two favorite sci-fi movies are Contact and Interstellar, and both of those are very very high tech. They're not like, you know, billions of spaceships and we've got like the intergalactic whatever, you know, it's not like that. It's something that I can think of as possible.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think the minute you can do that, people can relate to it. And that's when people enjoy it. And that's when people really get into it and absorb it. And that's it. And for me, that's it. Like, cause I was a scientist before I moved back to Canada. I was living in England for quite a few years, and I was a biomedical scientist there. And so that's, you know, provides the basis for a lot of my stuff. But it was difficult to talk to people about it until you start, you know, but now I use it in my writing, and I think it's those same concepts that I would use in the laboratory, but they're written about in fiction, and people can immediately, it's like that's what Asimov was always really good at, is he was taking all these concepts, but the way he wrote about them was just so straightforward and, you know, unencumbered by any sort of, you know, jargon or anything like that anybody can pick up an Asimov book and read it and understand it.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's the direction I would like to see a lot of more science fiction going in, because it should be accessible to everyone, you know, and not be, but I think, you know, because there was a lot of misconceptions about, you know, science fiction. You know, a lot of people still think of it as, you know, the way it was written in the 50s and stuff.
Right.
But there's so many different kinds of science fiction now. Oh, Dune. Oh God. See, Dune was what got me into science fiction.
Yeah. And it's so wonderful, but it's like that's not where sci-fi is going right now, you know.
No, that's it. Yeah.
Almost fantasy in a lot of ways. Like Dune and Star Wars, I feel like are tread that line between sci-fi and fantasy pretty well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's what's so brilliant about them. And that's it. They really successfully sort of mix the genres and stuff. And I think that's where a lot of where I want to see science fiction kind of going. Yeah, because I really enjoy it. I think using those fantastical elements, you know, and based on real scientific concepts and stuff, to me is just really, really interesting.
For sure. Now, so what's sort of next for you? I know you said you're going to dive a little bit more into your series. Is that
Yes.
your only project, or do you have some other things on the back burner?
I've got some other stuff. Like like I said, I'm just working with the Fox Wept Array at the moment, but I'm looking in maybe in the next 6 months, starting another project, but I'm not 100% sure what that's going to be yet. I have a bit more research to do. I've got some plans, but they're all very nebulous and quite convoluted at the moment. So
Those are the best kind.
yeah, exactly. I'm sure something will come of it, but I'm taking a bit of a break from, you know, this will be my 4th book that I've released this year. When it comes out, the 4th one's a retelling of the Frog Princess. So that'll be the 4th book this year, and I want to just take a step back for a couple of months and sort of, you know, refresh myself and just sort of, you know, I'll keep working on the Fox Wept Array. I want to put out a few shorts and things like that, but I'm also looking at maybe starting another series. But as of this moment, I have no idea what that's going to be.
Yeah, I always have all these projects going on in my head, and I was talking to Kat Hudson, you know, one of the other authors.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I've got all these ideas, and I'll have like book covers designed.
Oh God, yeah. Yes.
18 books later, I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, it's terrible, isn't it? Because that's it. I've just got so many, you know, so many things I want to do. But I find it, instead of finding it overwhelming, I find it invigorating and just really exciting. You know, every day I'm waking up and I'm just like, yeah, what am I gonna do? And that's a great place to be in. I think it's, you know, I feel really lucky that that's how I sort of feel about my work at the moment, because I know a lot of people. You know, and a lot of other authors, and when you get focused on, you know, on your sales and, you know, on what's trending and what's not, and whether your writing fits in with that, I know it can become quite stressful and overwhelming. And so I'm trying really hard to not look at it that way, to just look at it, you know, just keep looking forward, you know, instead of, you know, kind of getting mired in what's working and what's not working. I mean, obviously you have to do that to an extent, but for me, it's just, I'm just really, really excited about whatever I'm going to do next year, even though I have no idea what it is.
We can kind of lose the soul of.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think being able to look at it as a business and not lose that is sort of key, but really, really hard.
Oh, it is. It's super hard. But if you want to be successful, I think that's what you have to do. I don't think you can ever look at it purely as business or purely as art. I think you have to find a really good balance between the two of them. And I think most of the very successful authors that I know, that's what they've been able to do.
Yes.
But it's hard. You know, you're juggling burnout. You know, you're trying to put books out at a steady pace, and you're trying to keep stuff fresh. And it can be really overwhelming if you think too much about it, I think. So for me, I'm just trying to, not that I'm being oblivious to it, but I'm just trying to embrace it all.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I definitely am trying to approach a lot of various opportunities or interactions as like, this is interesting, let's see what happens, and not really have like, you know, any egg in any one basket, or, you know.
Well, that's it. Yeah, your expectations are just sort of, open expectations. That's the way I like to look at it. Like, I never did box sets until this year. You know, and I just thought this year, I thought, you know what, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to do some collabs, and it's been great. Like, it's been absolutely brilliant, and I'm really glad that I decided to do it.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but it's really fun because I think so many different people, you know, everyone brings something to the table, and figuring out how to like work around it, the various challenges that arise, and just trying to figure out like, okay, how do we herd all these cats?
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. It's like taking my parents and my husband's parents on holiday. Okay. And that's what it's like. It's, you know, trying to get them all to do the same thing at the same time.
I had a moment, I just got married in May, and we had
congratulations.
Thank you. We had both our sets of parents in Boston. And if anyone has driven in Boston, they know what that's like. It's absolutely and obviously there are places that are worse, but it takes 45 minutes to go 5 miles, and I had to get everyone in one car with my wedding dress on and then drive through the center of Boston during rush hour traffic.
Oh my goodness.
And like miraculously we were only half an hour late, but it was just that's how this entire box set has felt. Like, okay, I love you all, let's make it work.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I'm sorry if I contributed in any way to
I mean, like, it's just like people's schedules. It's not even like
well, because we're all in different countries, aren't we? Like, I'm in Canada, you're in the US.
And then I know O.E. Tierman is in Colorado, so same country,
right.
time zone.
Yeah.
And then I don't know where Kay is. I want to say New York. I don't know if I'm totally wrong with that. And then luckily Kat is like 3 hours from me.
Oh, that's pretty good then. Well, then she's got no excuse.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, like I've known her forever, but yeah, it's just like everyone is sort of in the same place, but not really. Like at least we're in the same hemisphere, I guess.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, but it's been so much fun, and I think it's definitely something that I want to try again.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to doing lots more box sets and collaborations and stuff in the future.
Yeah. So obviously, other than in the Dark Horizons box set, which by the way, people can order it at read.com/Dark Horizons. So plugging that real quick.
Get that in there.
Yeah. Obviously, other than that, where can people find you and your work?
So I'm on Facebook under AW Cross. I could give you the I'm on Twitter as well, and I have a website at awcrossauthor.com. And so I do try to be kind of consistent with social media, but sometimes it's just not.
It's a monster.
It's just not possible. Yeah, it's with time and energy, and because there's just so many rabbit holes to fall down on the internet. So it's yeah. So okay, so my Facebook is www.facebook.com/awcrossauthor / so that's it. And my Twitter is my computer's, I do not know what's going on. Well, it's not a good computer. Well, it is. I'm sorry. I'm afraid I've hurt feelings now.
It's gonna take over.
Yeah, if you don't hear from me again. My computer's taking me down. Yeah, so twitter.com/AW_cross.
Awesome.
And I am also on Instagram at AWCross6.
Cool.
So yeah, I do try to post stuff. I always try to post what I'm doing and that sort of thing. But I can be fairly sporadic with it. But I post, on my website, I have all my books, but I also do we're doing a little series right now called Through a Glass Darkly. And I'm taking the passages from the original fairy tales that I read and comparing them to sort of the similar passages in the retellings that I'm doing to sort of, show people how close or how far away from the original fairy tales they are. So you can find all that on the website, but I do post links to that on Facebook and Twitter as well.
Oh, awesome. And yeah, and I'll put the links to all of your places down in the show notes.
Oh yes, great, thank you. Yeah.
And I'll have to check out those comparisons. I always think that's really fun when people start comparing their work with the inspiration. I have a friend who's doing that she's writing like romantic suspense, and she's doing the same thing with the original like serial killers or the crimes that.
Oh wow, yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Podcast thing on it, which is so neat. If you want to be creeped out. So.
Oh gosh, yeah. No, well, my best friend Emily, she loves that. So I'll be passing that along to her if you can send me the details. Like, she's the kind of girl that comes up to you at a party and just if you've never met her before, and she'll just look at you and be like, "Do you like murder?" That's the kind of girl she is. So yeah, that sounds right up her. And she's a voracious reader, so that sounds right up her alley.
Yeah, I'll shoot that your way. But I think that's about all the time we have. But thank you so much.
Yeah, it's gone by really quickly.
Yeah, I know. You get to chatting, and then it's like, topic. So
yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much for joining me and for joining the box set. This has just been so much fun.
Oh no, it's been really fantastic for me, and thank you so much for the opportunity. Both for this, this cast and for the box set. Like I was absolutely thrilled
Oh
to
yeah,
be a
for
part
sure.
of it. So
Yeah, as soon as I like started to see people's covers and the little blurbs, I'm like, I just want to include them all.
oh no, it's hard, isn't it? It is hard, especially like we were talking about earlier, the diversity in science fiction now. It's like you could have you could have 100 themed box sets.
All within sci-fi or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you so much, and for our listeners, thank you so much for listening. This has been the Amphibian Press podcast. I'm Sarah Voris, and with me today was A.W. Cross. Thank you.